Little girl, this seat isn't for you. Captain Richard Hayes's voice cut through the quiet of first class, his cold eyes fixed on 13-year-old Noah Wright, a black girl sitting in seat 2A. Her gray hoodie and worn backpack stood out among the leather seats and champagne glasses. First class is for adults who pay, he sneered. You should head back to economy. Noah said nothing. She held out her boarding pass, her hand trembling slightly. Hayes snatched it, glanced once, and tossed it back. Who bought this for you? Do your parents even know you're here? Whispers rippled through the cabin. A man muttered, "Kids in first class now?" But Noah didn't cry. She calmly unlocked her phone, finger hovering over the camera. No one here knew her father was Marcus Wright, CEO and majority owner of Skybridge Airlines. No one knew that what happened next would change everything. Sandra Davis emerged from the galley with the practiced smile of someone who had perfected the art of customer service over 2 decades. But the smile died the moment her eyes landed on Noah. The lead flight attendant's expression shifted, something subtle, something most passengers wouldn't notice. But Noah saw it. The way Sandra's gaze traveled from Noah's face to her clothes, lingering on the scuffed sneakers and the frayed edge of her backpack strap. "Sweetie, is there a problem?" Sandra's voice was syrupy, artificially sweet. Hayes stepped aside, gesturing toward Noah like she was evidence in a trial. "This child is in the wrong seat. She needs to be moved to economy." Noah kept her voice steady. "I'm not in the wrong seat. This is 2A. That's what's on my boarding pass." She held up the paper again, her hand no longer trembling. Sandra took the boarding pass, examined it with theatrical thoroughness, then looked back at Noah with a practiced expression of concern. "Honey, are you traveling alone? At your age?" There was judgment embedded in the question, wrapped in false worry. "My father is waiting for me in Texas." "I see." Sandra's smile tightened. "Well, here's the situation. We have a very important guest who needs this particular seat. It's a last-minute arrangement, but I'm sure you understand. We can upgrade you next time you fly with us. How does that sound?" The offer was delivered like a kindness, but Noah heard what lay beneath it. She met Sandra's eyes directly. "I paid for this seat. I'm not giving it up." The words hung in the air for a moment. Sandra's professional mask slipped just slightly, revealing irritation underneath. Hayes shifted his weight, his jaw tightening. Around them, more passengers were paying attention now. A young flight attendant named Maria stood near the galley door, her eyes wide as she watched the exchange. She looked at Noah with something that might have been sympathy, but she said nothing. She didn't dare. "This isn't a request," Hayes said, his voice hardening. "It's an instruction." Noah straightened in her seat, her backbone steel despite her small frame. "Then it's an instruction I'm refusing. I have the right to the seat I purchased." Hayes leaned in slightly, his voice dropping but losing none of its edge. "You know what your problem is? You think you know about rights? You're just a kid. You do what adults tell you to do." A businessman in 4C glanced up from his laptop, his brow furrowing as he took in the scene. A woman with silver hair in the row behind Noah, Karen was her name, though Noah didn't know it yet, set down her magazine, her attention now fully captured. But others were less sympathetic. The man across the aisle shook his head slowly, muttering something about kids these days to his wife. Sandra crossed her arms. "We're trying to be reasonable here, but you're making this very difficult." Noah didn't respond. Instead, she slowly pulled her phone from her hoodie pocket and opened the voice recorder app, placing the device on her tray table. The red recording indicator glowed softly. Hayes saw it but didn't understand its significance. He was too focused on asserting his authority, too confident in his position. What he didn't see was the sharpness in Noah's eyes, the same eyes that had sat in boardrooms, that had watched her father negotiate billion-dollar deals, that had learned long ago how to recognize injustice when it wore a uniform. Hayes moved closer, positioning himself so that he towered over Noah's seat. His shadow fell across her lap. "Listen to me carefully, little girl. There's a VIP who needs this seat. You're going to move. Right now." Noah looked up at him, her voice quiet but firm. "I have a legal right to this seat. You can't force me to leave it." "Legal right?" Hayes laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "You want to lecture me about legal rights? I've been flying for 30 years. I'm the captain of this aircraft. What I say goes. That's the only law that matters here. Sandra stepped forward, her voice taking on a harder edge. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to call airport security. Do you really want to cause that kind of scene? Do you want that kind of trouble? The threat hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. Around them, the atmosphere in the cabin shifted. Passengers who had been minding their own business were now openly watching. Karen, the woman seated behind Noah, leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing as she observed the exchange. The businessman, Tom, a regular flyer who'd seen his share of airline drama, stopped typing on his laptop, his attention fully captured. But not everyone was sympathetic. Mr. Patterson, a heavy-set man in 3A, shook his head with visible disapproval. "Just do what they say, kid," he called out. "Stop being difficult." Mrs. Collins, seated beside him, nodded vigorously. "Children these days don't know how to respect authority. My grandchildren would never." "She has a valid ticket," Tom interjected, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "I saw her board with it." Patterson waved him off. "That's not the point. The captain knows what he's doing." Noah felt the cabin closing in around her, felt the weight of judgment from multiple directions. Some passengers looked at her with pity, others with annoyance, and still others with outright hostility. But she didn't let it show on her face. She'd learned from watching her father in hostile boardrooms, show nothing, give them nothing. She reached into her hoodie pocket and quietly opened the voice recording app, then switched to video. She angled the phone carefully on her lap, the camera pointing upward to capture Hayes' face. Her finger pressed record. "I'm documenting this," she said calmly. "For my safety." Hayes' face flushed red. "You're documenting. You think you can just—" He cut himself off, clearly fighting to maintain his composure. "You don't have permission to record me." "I have every right to record when I feel threatened or discriminated against," Noah replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's legal." "Discriminated?" Hayes' voice rose. "You're really going to play that card? This has nothing to do with—" "With what?" Noah asked quietly. "What were you about to say, Captain?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Hayes' mouth opened, then closed. Sandra stepped in quickly, her voice sharp. "Don't twist this into something it's not. This is about following instructions and maintaining order on this aircraft." Karen spoke up from behind them. "She's a child sitting in her assigned seat. What exactly is she doing wrong?" "Ma'am, please stay out of this," Sandra snapped, her professional veneer cracking. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns everyone on this plane if you're harassing passengers," Tom added, his voice firm. But Mr. Patterson was louder. "Oh, for God's sake, the girl is being stubborn. That's what's wrong. Just move her and let's get this flight in the air." Several other passengers murmured in agreement. The cabin was dividing, lines being drawn invisibly down the aisle. Maria, the young flight attendant, stood frozen near the galley, her hands clasped together tightly. Her eyes met Noah's for just a moment, an apology without words. But she remained silent. Noah kept the camera recording, kept her face neutral. Her thumb hovered over her messages app. She typed quickly, "Dad, I need you. They're trying to remove me from my seat. Flight 237. She hit send. Hayes didn't see the text. He was too focused on the phone, on the camera pointed at him, on the way his authority was being questioned in front of dozens of witnesses. His hand twitched at his side. "Put that phone away," he ordered. "Last warning." Noah's finger didn't move from the record button. She simply looked up at him, her dark eyes unwavering, and said nothing at all. Hayes turned sharply and called toward the back of first class. "Jake, get up here." A tall flight attendant in his early 30s emerged from the rear galley. Jake, one of the senior crew members who'd worked under Hayes for years. He approached with the confident stride of someone accustomed to backing up the captain's decisions without question. "We need to move this passenger," Hayes said, gesturing toward Noah as if she were cargo. "She's refusing to cooperate." Jake assessed the situation with a quick glance, his eyes settling on Noah with the same dismissive judgment she'd seen from the others. "Miss, you need to come with me. We'll get you situated in economy where there's plenty of room." "I'm not moving." Noah's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the calm. "This is my seat. I have every right to be here." Sandra moved closer, her voice dropping into that dangerous register of false patience worn thin. "Young lady, you're disrupting this entire cabin. If you don't comply, we will have no choice but to call security. And trust me, you don't want that on your record." The threat was clear. Noah felt her chest tighten, felt the familiar sting of tears threatening behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give them that satisfaction. "This is ridiculous," Sandra continued, her voice rising just enough for nearby passengers to hear clearly. "Children like you think you can do whatever you want these days. Did your parents even teach you manners? Or did they just hand you a credit card and send you on your way?" The words landed like physical blows. Around the cabin, reactions split sharply. Karen gasped audibly. Tom's jaw clenched, but Mr. Patterson nodded approvingly, and Mrs. Collins whispered something to the woman beside her, both of them glancing at Noah with thinly veiled disdain. An elderly white man in 5A spoke up, his voice carrying authority. "Young lady, when I was your age, we respected our elders. We did what we were told. Maybe you should try it." A woman across the aisle added, "Look at how she's dressed. Does she even belong in first class?" Another passenger, a businessman in an expensive suit, muttered to his companion, "Probably using someone else's miles. These kids and their entitlement." Noah felt the walls closing in. The whispers, the stares, the judgment. It pressed down on her from all sides. She was surrounded by strangers who had decided who she was based on nothing but the color of her skin and the clothes on her back. They'd written her story before she'd spoken a single word. But she didn't break. Instead, she reached for her phone with steady hands and switched the recording from audio to video. She held it up, making sure the camera captured Hayes's face, Sandra's expression, the scene unfolding around her. "I'm recording this," she said clearly. "Everything that's happening right now is being documented." Sandra's face flushed. "You cannot record us without permission. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not," Noah replied, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "I have the right to record when I'm being threatened or discriminated against. This is for my protection." "Discriminated?" Hayes's voice rose, sharp and defensive. "You're really going to go there? This has nothing to do with—" He stopped himself, but the implication hung heavy in the air. "With what, Captain?" Noah asked softly. "What doesn't it have to do with?" The silence that followed was deafening. Hayes's face darkened. Sandra looked away. Even some of the passengers who'd been criticizing Noah shifted uncomfortably. Maria, still standing near the galley, looked like she wanted to say something. Her mouth opened slightly, but when Sandra shot her a warning glare, she closed it again and looked down at her feet. Noah's phone buzzed in her hand, a text from her father. "Baby, what's happening? Stay calm. I'm handling it." She felt a surge of relief so powerful it nearly broke her composure, but she didn't let it show. She simply typed back, "They won't leave me alone. Captain Hayes and a woman named Sandra. They're trying to force me out of my seat." She hit send, then opened her camera app again, positioning the phone so it captured the scene clearly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she navigated to her father's Twitter account, Marcus Wright CEO, with its 2.3 million followers. She'd had access to it for emergencies. This, she decided, qualified. But she didn't post. Not yet. She wanted them to have one more chance, one final opportunity to do the right thing. "Captain Hayes," she said, her voice carrying across the cabin, "I'm going to ask you one more time. Please let me sit in the seat I paid for. I'm not causing any trouble. I'm not hurting anyone. I just want to get to Texas to see my father." For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in Hayes's expression. Uncertainty, perhaps, a recognition that this had gone too far. But then Mr. Patterson spoke up again, his voice loud and decisive. "For crying out loud, just remove her already. We're all going to miss our departure time because of this nonsense." The moment passed. Hayes's face hardened again. "That's it. Jake, call airport security. Sandra, document this as a passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions. This girl is getting off this plane." Sandra pulled out her tablet, her fingers flying across the screen. "Passenger in 2A, refusal to comply, disrupting cabin operations, unauthorized recording of crew members." Noah watched her type, watched the lies being documented as official record. She thought about all the people who'd been in her position before, People who didn't have the resources she had, who didn't have a father with the power to make this right. People who'd been forced to accept this treatment because fighting back would only make things worse. She looked down at her phone, at her father's Twitter account still open on the screen. Her thumb hovered over the post button. "These procedures," she said quietly, speaking as much to the camera as to the crew standing over her, "seem to target very specific people. I wonder if you even realize who you're dealing with right now." The question hung in the air, a warning, a promise, a glimpse of the earthquake about to hit. Hayes's patience, already thin, snapped completely. "That's enough!" His voice boomed through the cabin, silencing every conversation. "I don't care what you think you're recording or who you think you are. You're getting off this plane. Now." He reached forward, his hand closing around Noah's wrist, not gently, but with the grip of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Noah gasped, more from shock than pain, but she held onto her phone with her other hand. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice sharp and clear. Maria stepped forward instinctively. "Captain, maybe we should—" "Stay out of this, Maria," Sandra cut in, her voice like a whip. "Unless you want to be written up for insubordination. Or worse." Maria froze, her face pale. She looked at Noah, then at Sandra, then back at Noah. The apology in her eyes was clear, but she took a step back, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Hayes yanked on Noah's arm, trying to pull her from her seat. "I said get up!" Noah braced her feet against the floor, her free hand gripping the armrest. "You're assaulting me. I'm 13 years old and you're using physical force on me. Everyone here is seeing this." She raised her phone higher, making sure the camera captured Hayes's hand on her arm, captured the redness already forming on her skin, captured the rage on his face. "Give me that phone." Hayes lunged for it, but Noah twisted away, holding it close to her chest. Jake moved in from the other side. "Sir, let me handle this." "No," Hayes snapped. "I'm handling it. This child needs to learn respect." "Respect?" Noah's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. "Is this what respect looks like to you? Dragging a child out of her seat because you don't think she belongs here?" Karen couldn't stay silent any longer. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, her voice ringing with indignation. "Stop it! What are you doing? She's a child! She has a valid ticket!" Tom rose as well, his laptop forgotten. "This is completely out of line. Captain, you're using physical force on a minor. I'm a witness to this." But their voices were immediately drowned out by opposition from the other side. Mr. Patterson heaved himself up from his seat, his face red. "Oh, for God's sake, stop coddling her. She's been asked to move. She refused. Actions have consequences." Mrs. Collins stood beside him, nodding vigorously. "Exactly. When did we start letting children defy authority like this? The captain is in charge." A younger man in 4B joined in. "We're all going to be delayed because this kid thinks the rules don't apply to her. Just do what you're told." The cabin erupted into competing voices. Some passengers pulled out their own phones, recording the confrontation. Others shouted at each other across the aisle. The neat division of first class dissolved into chaos. "She has every right to her seat," Karen insisted. "She's disrupting the entire flight," Patterson shot back. Sandra raised her voice above the din. "Everyone, please sit down. We're handling this situation." "You're not handling anything," Tom countered. "You're bullying a child." "We're enforcing policy," Sandra retorted, her professional mask completely gone now. "And if you continue to interfere, sir, you'll be removed as well." Hayes still had his hand on Noah's arm. She could feel his fingers digging in, could feel the bruises that would form later. But she kept the camera steady, kept it recording. "Let go of me," she said again, louder this time. "You're hurting me." "I'm barely touching you," Hayes said through gritted teeth. "You're being dramatic." "I can see the marks from here," Karen called out. "You're leaving bruises on her." Jake positioned himself to block Karen's view. "Ma'am, sit down or you will be removed from this aircraft." The cabin was divided now, physically and ideologically. On one side, Karen, Tom, and a handful of others stood in solidarity with Noah. On the other, Mr. Patterson, Mrs. Collins, and their supporters formed a wall of disapproval. And in the middle, a growing number of passengers simply wanted the conflict to end, regardless of who was right. That's it, Hayes said, releasing Noah's arm only to pull out his radio. Security. This is Captain Hayes on Flight 237. I need airport security at Gate 12 immediately. We have an uncooperative passenger refusing to follow crew instructions. Female, approximately 13 years old. Yes, I need them now. The words 13 years old rippled through the cabin. Some passengers who'd been on the fence suddenly looked uncomfortable. A woman in 6A whispered to her husband, "They're calling security on a child?" But others doubled down. "Good," Mrs. Collins said loudly. "Maybe this will teach her a lesson." Sandra was already typing on her tablet again, documenting aggressive behavior, verbal confrontation with captain, refusal to deplane, potential threat to flight safety. Threat to flight safety? Tom's voice was incredulous. She's sitting in her seat. She's recording crew members without consent and inciting other passengers to interfere with our duties, Sandra shot back. Maria stood frozen by the galley, her eyes wide with horror. She'd seen plenty of difficult passenger situations in her 3 years with Skybridge, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so fundamentally wrong. But when she glanced at Sandra, saw the warning in the senior flight attendant's eyes, she looked away. Noah's hands were shaking now, but not from fear, from anger, from the injustice of it all, from watching these adults, people who were supposed to be professionals, abuse their power so blatantly while half the cabin cheered them on. She looked directly into her phone camera, her voice clear and steady despite everything. "My name is Noah Wright. I'm 13 years old. Today I'm witnessing systematic discrimination on the airline my family owns." She paused, letting that sink in. "I am the daughter of Marcus Wright, CEO of Skybridge Airlines. Our family trust controls 60% of this company, and right now, Captain Richard Hayes and lead flight attendant Sandra Davis are violating every anti-discrimination policy this airline has." The cabin went silent. Every eye turned to her. "They've physically assaulted me. They've tried to remove me from a seat I legally purchased. They've called security on me for sitting while black in first class." Her voice didn't waver. "And every single second of this has been recorded." She tapped her screen, uploading the video to her father's Twitter account. Her caption was simple. "This is how Skybridge staff treat a 13-year-old black girl in first class. My daughter. Watch." She hit post. Then she switched to her phone app and called her father directly, putting it on speaker before anyone could stop her. The phone rang once. Twice. Hayes and Sandra stood frozen, their faces draining of color as the implications crashed over them like a wave. Jake took a step backward. Around them, passengers held their breath. On the third ring, Marcus Wright answered, "Noah, baby, I'm watching the video right now. Are you safe?" His voice, deep, controlled, but with an edge of barely contained fury, filled the cabin through the phone's speaker. Every word was clear, every syllable was a promise. "I'm okay, Dad," Noah said, and for the first time her voice cracked slightly. "But I need you to handle this." "I'm handling it right now," Marcus said. "Put Captain Hayes on the phone, now." Noah held out her phone toward Hayes. His hand trembled as he reached for it. The entire first-class cabin waited, silent as a grave, for what would come next. Hayes's hand shook as he brought the phone to his ear. He cleared his throat, trying to summon the authority that had evaporated the moment Noah spoke her last name. "This is Captain Hayes." The silence on the other end lasted just long enough to be uncomfortable. When Marcus Wright finally spoke, his voice was ice. "Captain Hayes, this is Marcus Wright, CEO of Skybridge Airlines." Each word was pronounced with deliberate precision. "The 13-year-old girl you just physically assaulted, the child whose arm you grabbed hard enough to leave bruises, is my daughter, Noah Wright. She is the beneficiary of the family trust that controls 60% of this company, which means, Captain, that you just put your hands on your boss's child." The color drained from Hayes's face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around him, passengers leaned forward, straining to hear every word, even though Marcus's voice carried clearly through the speaker. "You have 10 seconds to apologize to my daughter," Marcus continued, his tone brooking no argument. "And then you're done, permanently." Hayes looked down at Noah. She sat perfectly still, her phone still recording, her eyes meeting his with a steadiness that made him feel small. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I didn't know. That's not an apology, Marcus said sharply. And it's not an excuse. You didn't need to know who she was to treat her with basic human dignity, but you didn't. You saw a black child in first class and decided she didn't belong there. Isn't that right, Captain? No, sir, Don't lie to me. My daughter recorded everything. I've already watched the video. I heard what you said. I saw what you did. Marcus's voice dropped even lower. You're grounded, effective immediately. When this plane lands, you'll be escorted off by security. Your employment with Skybridge Airlines is terminated. Hayes's knees seemed to buckle slightly. He gripped the seat back in front of him for support. Sir, please, I've been with this airline for 30 years. And in 30 years, you never learned that discrimination is unacceptable. Sandra Davis, I know you're listening. You're terminated as well. Sandra, who'd been standing behind Hayes, went rigid. Her tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Mr. Wright, I was just following the captain's orders. You were enforcing his discrimination, Marcus interrupted. You made the choice to participate. You made the choice to insult my daughter, to threaten her, to help create a hostile environment for a child. Those were your choices, Ms. Davis. Now you live with the consequences. Maria, still standing by the galley, had tears streaming down her face. She pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal she was witnessing. Marcus wasn't finished. Jake, I saw you on the video, too. You're suspended pending a full investigation. If you want to keep your job, you'll cooperate fully with HR. Jake's face went ashen. He nodded, then seemed to remember that Marcus couldn't see him. Yes, sir, I understand. Good. Now, all three of you step away from my daughter. Maria, you're still there, right? Maria jumped slightly. Yes, Mr. Wright. Thank you for not participating in this. Please stay with Noah until we land. Make sure she has everything she needs. Of course, sir. Absolutely. Maria moved quickly to Noah's side, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering shock. Noah's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at the screen and saw that her father's tweet had already been retweeted thousands of times. The video was spreading like wildfire. Justice for Noah was beginning to trend. Another notification popped up, this time from Skybridge's official account. We are aware of the discriminatory incident on Flight 237. An immediate investigation is underway. Skybridge Airlines has zero tolerance for discrimination of any kind. Updates to follow. Zero tolerance. The tweet appeared on the screens of passengers who'd been frantically searching for information. Phones lit up throughout the cabin as people realized they were witnessing something that would be national news within hours. Karen, who'd been standing throughout the confrontation, began to clap. Slowly at first, then faster. Tom joined her, then others. The applause built until it filled the cabin. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to drown out the stunned silence from Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Collins, who looked like they wanted to disappear into their seats. Hayes stood motionless, his career dissolving around him. Sandra had slumped into the nearest empty seat, her head in her hands. Jake backed away toward the rear galley, as if distance might somehow save him. Noah, Marcus said, his voice softening now. Baby, are you really okay? Noah looked at her arm where Hayes had grabbed her. Red marks were already darkening into bruises. But she nodded, then remembered he couldn't see her. I'm okay, Dad. Maria's here with me now. Good. I'm proud of you. You stood up for yourself. You documented everything. You did exactly what I taught you. There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice carried both love and barely contained rage. But no child should have to go through what you just went through. No one should. He addressed the cabin now, his voice carrying through Noah's phone speaker to every passenger listening. To everyone on Flight 237, what you witnessed today is not an isolated incident. It's part of a pattern that exists throughout the airline industry and beyond. My daughter had the resources and the platform to fight back, but thousands of people face this kind of treatment every day without any recourse. That ends now. At Skybridge, that ends today. The cabin was completely silent now. Even the ambient hum of the aircraft seemed muted. Captain Hayes, Ms. Davis, security will be waiting at the gate. Don't make this worse by causing a scene. Marcus's tone left no room for argument. To the rest of the crew, take care of my passengers. Get them to Texas safely. Maria, thank you again for being there for Noah. Of course, Mr. Wright. Maria said softly. Noah, I'll see you in an hour. I love you. I love you too, Dad. The call ended. For a moment, no one moved. The power shift that had just occurred was so complete, so absolute, that it left everyone momentarily stunned. Hayes, who'd stood at the front of the cabin radiating authority just minutes ago, now looked small and defeated. Sandra sat hunched in her seat, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Jake had disappeared into the galley entirely. Noah lowered her phone, finally allowing herself to exhale fully. Maria knelt beside her seat. Can I get you anything? Water? Juice? Anything at all? Noah shook her head, then changed her mind. Actually, yes. Can I have some water, please? Of course. Right away. Maria practically ran to the galley. Around them, the cabin slowly came back to life. Passengers whispered to each other, their phones out, already sharing their own recordings and perspectives on social media. Karen reached forward and gently touched Noah's shoulder. You're incredibly brave. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Thank you, Noah said quietly. Thank you for speaking up. Tom nodded from across the aisle. What they did was wrong. I'm glad your father is making it right. Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Collins remained conspicuously silent, staring straight ahead as if they could will themselves invisible. Several of the passengers who'd supported Hayes's actions looked uncomfortable now, their earlier certainty replaced by the creeping realization that they'd been on the wrong side of history. The atmosphere in the cabin had transformed completely. What had been a battleground was now something else, a moment frozen in time, a turning point that everyone present would remember and retell for years to come. Maria returned with a bottle of water, her hands still trembling slightly. She opened it for Noah and handed it over with a gentle smile. If you need anything, anything at all, just let me know. Noah took a sip, feeling the cool water soothe her throat, raw from the stress and the confrontation. She looked at the phone in her lap, at the video that was still spreading across the internet, at the notifications that kept flooding in. She'd never wanted this kind of attention. She'd never wanted to become a symbol or a hashtag. She'd just wanted to sit in the seat she'd paid for and get to Texas to see her father. But sometimes, she realized, justice required visibility. Sometimes the only way to change a system was to expose it to the light. She glanced at Hayes one more time. He was sitting in a crew jump seat now, his head in his hands, his entire world crumbling around him. She felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a quiet certainty that this was necessary. For her. For everyone who'd come before her. For everyone who would come after. The plane began to push back from the gate. The usual announcements played, but nothing about this flight would ever be usual again. The plane landed in Texas 90 minutes later. Throughout the flight, Hayes and Sandra had remained isolated. Hayes in the crew jump seat, Sandra in an empty seat at the back. Neither spoke. Neither made eye contact with anyone. When the plane pulled into the gate and the seatbelt sign chimed off, no one moved. Through the window, Noah could see airport security gathering at the jetway entrance. Behind them stood her father. Marcus Wright entered first, his eyes finding Noah immediately. He knelt beside her seat. Let me see your arm. Noah pulled up her sleeve. The bruises had darkened, clear finger marks where Hayes had gripped her. Marcus photographed them, his jaw tight. Did he hurt you anywhere else? No, Dad, just my arm. He pulled her into a hug. For the first time since the ordeal began, Noah let herself fully relax. Marcus stood and turned to Hayes. Captain Hayes, Sandra Davis, you're to deplane immediately with security. Security officers stepped forward. Hayes stood on shaking legs, looking at Marcus as if to speak, but found no words. There was nothing to say. Sandra followed, her face blotchy from crying. As they passed Noah's seat, Sandra's eyes flickered toward her with belated understanding. Then security ushered them out. The entire cabin watched them go. Several passengers were still recording. Marcus addressed Jake, who'd emerged from the rear galley. Jake, 30 days suspension without pay. Sensitivity training required. Refuse or repeat this, and you're done. Understood? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Apologize to my daughter. Jake turned to Noah. I'm so sorry, Noah. What we did was wrong. I should have stood up for you. Noah looked at him. His apology seemed genuine. Thank you. I accept your apology. A company representative stepped forward. On behalf of Skybridge Airlines, we apologize to Noah Wright and everyone who witnessed this. Captain Hayes and Ms. Davis have been terminated effective immediately. The FAA will be notified. She looked at Noah. No one should ever be treated the way you were treated today. Marcus placed his hand on Noah's shoulder. Let's get you out of here. As they passed through the cabin, several passengers spoke up. Thank you for standing up, Karen said, squeezing Noah's hand. Tom nodded. You were incredibly brave. Even some neutral passengers offered small smiles. But Mr. Patterson and Mrs. Collins kept their eyes forward, saying nothing. As Noah stepped onto the jetway, she could see news cameras in the terminal. The video had gone viral. Justice for Noah was trending nationwide. Behind them, Hayes and Sandra were being processed by airport security. Their credentials were confiscated. Within days, the FAA would permanently revoke Hayes's pilot license after finding multiple violations. Sandra's name would be blacklisted industry-wide. The justice was swift. The consequences were severe. As Marcus and Noah drove away from the airport, she watched the building disappear. She thought about all the people who'd faced what she'd faced without resources to fight back. Dad, she said quietly. Yes, baby? This happens to people all the time, doesn't it? People who don't have what we have. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Yes, it does. Then we have to do more than just fire 2 people. We have to change the whole system. Marcus looked at his daughter and felt his heart swell with pride. You're absolutely right, he said. And that's exactly what we're going to do. 3 days later, Noah sat in her father's office at Skybridge headquarters, the Dallas skyline stretching out behind her. She'd recorded a video, not for drama this time, but for clarity. She looked into the camera, her voice steady. I didn't want to use my family's position. I just wanted to fly to Texas to see my dad. But when you see injustice, especially when it's directed at you or people who don't have a voice, you can't stay silent. She paused. What happened to me happens to people every single day. On planes, in stores, in schools, in workplaces, and most of those people don't have the resources I have. That's not right. Noah's expression softened slightly. You deserve respect. You deserve dignity. Don't let anyone make you feel small because of how you look or where you come from. You're worth more than their prejudice. Marcus leaned forward. At Skybridge, we're implementing immediate changes. Starting next week, every crew member will undergo mandatory anti-discrimination training with real accountability. We're establishing an independent reporting system for passengers who experience discrimination, and we're funding scholarships for young people of color pursuing aviation careers. Noah nodded. My dad taught me that having power means nothing if you don't use it to make things better, not just for yourself, but for everyone. So that's what we're doing. The video ended with father and daughter side by side, using their platform not for revenge, but for reform. Within hours, the video had millions of views. Other airlines announced similar programs. Politicians referenced the incident in speeches. Schools showed the video in classrooms. But for Noah, the most meaningful response came from thousands of messages, from people who'd experienced similar treatment and finally felt seen. People who said they'd been afraid to speak up but now felt empowered. Change wouldn't happen overnight. Noah knew that, but this was a start, a real start. Noah's final video went live a week later. She sat in the same first-class seat, 2A, on a Skybridge flight, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Maria sat across from her, smiling genuinely. The new captain had personally welcomed Noah aboard. Noah looked into the camera with a confident smile. So here's what I learned. When you see someone being treated unfairly, on a plane, in a store, anywhere, don't just watch. Speak up. Record it if you need to. Share the story. Your voice matters more than you think. She leaned forward slightly, her tone earnest. Silence doesn't protect you. It protects the people doing wrong. Don't let your silence become their shield. She sat back, her smile turning slightly playful. And here's something else I learned. She paused for effect. Never judge someone by how they look. Never assume you know their story based on their age, their clothes, or the color of their skin. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Because you never know who actually owns the plane you're standing on. The camera held on her face for a beat, then cut to the Skybridge logo with text overlaying it. Speak up, stand up, fly higher. Below it, hashtags appeared. Justice, in the skies. Speak up, fly higher. The video ended, but its impact didn't. Within 24 hours, her Speak Up was trending globally. People began sharing their own stories of discrimination, and more importantly, stories of times they'd spoken up and made a difference. The movement spread beyond airlines to retail, healthcare, education, every sector where bias still thrived. Noah's story became more than just a viral moment. It became a catalyst. Companies scrambled to review their policies. Training programs were overhauled. People who had previously stayed silent found their courage. And on every Skybridge flight, crew members wore small pins that read, "Speak Up," a reminder that passengers had a voice and the airline was listening. Noah Wright, 13 years old, owner of 60% of an airline through her family trust, survivor of discrimination, champion of justice, had changed more than just one flight. She'd sparked a movement, because sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to accept injustice. One person willing to stand up, even when everyone around them says to sit down. One person who understands that real power isn't about controlling others. It's about empowering everyone. The revolution wasn't televised. It was recorded on a 13-year-old's phone and shared with the world. Speak up, stand up, fly higher.